In this episode, I'll attempt to draw a relatively simple Blackboard image and simulate a chalk text effect in Inkscape version 0.46. Let's begin. Alright, the first thing that I'm going to do is go to my File, pull down, Document Properties, and I'm going to set my document up for 640 by 480. Doesn't need to be quite so big. Okay, and oh, by the way, before I forget, I've got my key status monitor turned off for this episode because I have my Wacom tablet plugged in, and the workaround for the key status monitor is conflicting with my Wacom. Ubuntu Intrepid isn't quite so friendly with Wacoms like it used to be, but we'll just have to go without our key status monitor, so I'm sorry for that. Anyways, let's continue. I got my document set up for 640 by 480, and one of the things that I'm going to do first is draw a couple rectangles. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that my stroke is turned off, and we'll give this a blue color, and I'll draw another rectangle this way. Okay, and we'll take this first rectangle. I'm going to make it about 40 pixels wide, and we'll make it 480 pixels high. I'll change the color of this rectangle here, and we'll make this 640 pixels long or wide by 40 pixels high. And I'll go ahead and true those up on my page. We're going to take this one, center it on the page, and I'm going to push it all the way over to the left. And I'll take the red one, center it up, and push it all the way up to the top. Okay, and I have an image about like that. And another thing I need to warn you about is if you see my graphics up here go kind of wiggy like it is right now, that's Compiz. I've had it turned off for quite a long time. Ever since my last screencast, and I haven't been using it, and I'm kind of losing my interest with Compiz. The reason that I have it running is because I enjoy a couple settings that I use for screencasting, and but it just seems like lately it's kind of been running kind of junky too. So if you see that title bar up there go a little crazy, that's Compiz. So anyways, let's carry on and go up to the corner here, and I'm going to select both of these items, and we're going to go to Path, Object to Path to convert it to a path. And what I need to do is go to my Inkscape preferences, and I need to double check a setting. I'm going to go to my Steps option, and I'm going to make sure that my rotation snaps every 15 degrees is set. You can set that for just about anything that you want. Typically I have it set for like 10 or 15, but I want to rotate this or move my degree handles in on a 45-degree angle, and I just want to make sure that that's checked. Alright, the next thing that I'm going to do is go to File, Inkscape Preferences, whoops, I was just there, File, Document Properties, and I'm going to make sure that my Snap to Paths and Snap to Nodes is checked. Okay, and I'm going to select our red rectangle, select this node, and holding my control key down, I'm going to left click on this and pull this all the way over straight. Okay, and when you let go of that, it'll snap to this edge. I'm going to do the same thing to our blue rectangle. I'm going to select its node, hold my control key down, slide it down, and let it snap on to the other node there. Okay, and that gives me a nice miter effect. Okay, so we'll hit our number pad 5, and I'm going to take our blue image, right click, duplicate, and I'm going to mirror that, and I'm going to push that over to the other side. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that corner, and I'm going to select our red rectangle, and push its node inward. Okay, and I do that again by holding the control key down, left clicking, and pushing it in. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to take our red rectangle, right click, duplicate, and we're going to mirror that. Zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing here. I don't have to be that far out. Okay, and we'll select our line tool, and I'll push it to the bottom. Okay, now what I've simulated is a nice picture frame, basically, with miters. I want to make sure that all your miters are the way they are, and they're not. Okay, so it looks like I forgot to get the blue. Not to worry. We can just select our blue here, holding the control. Okay, and then we'll go to the other side. Okay, and then we'll hit number pad 5 to zoom totally. Okay, let me just move these away to make sure that I've got miters, and I do. Okay, now my way of making those miters isn't the only way, obviously. Inkscape has lots of alternative ways to make that, so just use whatever method you need to get those miters. Okay. All right, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay, now sitting on my desktop, I have two textures. One is a wood texture, one is a Blackboard texture. I will post those online so you guys can download those. What I'm going to do is just left click on my wood texture and drag and drop that right onto my canvas. Okay, and I get something about like that. I'm going to right click on that texture and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to slide it down and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, so I have two copies. One that's vertical grain, one that's horizontal grain. Okay, and we'll select both of these and push it all the way to the back. All right, next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to select my red rectangle on the bottom, red rectangle on the top. I'm going to group that. We'll select both of our blue rectangles and I'll group that. Okay, I'm going to take this horizontal image and I'm going to put that centered right on my page. I'm going to select my red group, my image. I'm going to go to Object, Clip, Set. Okay, now we'll take this second image and we'll center it on the page. I'll push this all the way to the bottom. I think it is. It's just that our blue is shining through there. I'm going to select my blue group. I'm going to select my image here. Whoops, looks like I've done that backwards. No, I've done that right. I'll select my blue again and my image. I'll go to Object, Clip. Got a little confused there for a second. Okay, let me zoom back in on that. And what I've simulated is a nice wood frame with the grain going the right way. Okay, so we zoom back out on our corners here and we can see how that looks. Okay, and if your grain is a little blurry, what you need to do is pipe in a larger resolution texture and then scale the picture down in Inkscape, and then everything will look a little bit better. But I think for this screencast and this image, I think it looks just fine. All right, let's get this thing out of the way. Let me get a sip of water. All right, so I think we're ready now for our Blackboard texture. And again, that's sitting on my desktop. I'll left click and just drag and drop that in right on my canvas. This is a much faster way of importing an image into Inkscape. And I'll push this over and I'm going to scale this down just a little bit. We don't need to have it so big. And I'm going to draw a new rectangle and I'm going to make it the same size as my document, which happens to be 640 wide, 480 high, Okay, and we're going to zoom in on this area here. And I noticed on this texture, you see the number 8 in here. Well, I want to make sure that I clip that onto my red background. So I'm going to take this and just push it in just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just clip this texture onto this rectangle. So I'm going to select my rectangle first, then my texture. We'll go to Object, Clip, Set. Okay, and I'm going to take that, slide it all the way down to the bottom, and then I'm going to center that up on my page. Okay, and let's take a look at that image. We'll hit number 5 on our keypad. Okay, and basically I have a very generic looking wood picture frame with our Blackboard texture in the back. Okay, so far so good. The problem is with this image is that our wood frame texture is a little flat. There's no depth to it. Now, there are a couple things that you can do. One is you can extrude that back a little bit to show a little depth. But I think what I'm going to do is show depth by just drawing and shading the edges here. Okay, so we do that by selecting our Bezier pen, and I'm just going to try to eye that and get that right on the corner. I'm going to hold my control key down to keep that path straight, and then I'm going to push it down right there. Then I'm going to zoom in on this corner so I can take a look at where I have it. And we'll make this about 50% transparent. And I'm going to slide that in about halfway. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to make that about 3 pixels wide. And we'll change this back to 100% opacity. And we'll zoom back out. And I need to fix this corner just a little bit. I've drawn it a little too far. So let's just push that node back. Okay, so I'm going to select this stroke. Go to our fill and stroke dialog, and I'm going to make this 1% blur. Okay, now by doing that, you can see that I've added a little depth to this wood texture. You can see that it kind of rolls and moves down. Okay, and that's just a quick little way of getting just a little bit of depth. Now you want to watch your ends. Make sure that you get them far enough in. We can do that by just selecting on that and pushing it down just a little bit. And zooming back out. Okay, that's probably pretty good. Now what I want to do is dress up this edge and this bottom edge here to show a little depth there. And we do that by using the same technique. Just a little bit. And again, I'm going to grab my Bezier tool, holding my control key. I'm going to draw straight and then over. We'll hit enter. Again, I'll make this 3 pixels wide. I'm going to make this 50% transparent, and I'm going to zoom in on this corner. Okay, that allows me to see through my stroke. And I'll try to get that so half into the wood, half outside of the wood. Okay, that's probably pretty good. Okay, I'll take that stroke and we'll make that 100%. We'll zoom back out. Okay, and then you can see that I have my stroke or my path just a little bit too long on the edges. That's okay. We'll just go ahead and take care of that in just a second. We're going to make this a 1. We'll go ahead and look at the effect. Okay, now you can see that I have a nice dark roll on this edge, and that kind of simulates just a little bit of depth, and that's perfect. That's the effect that we were going for there. Okay, so let's take care of this little mistake. We'll push this down just a little bit. We don't want our blur to go above. And I think that corner looks pretty good. I've got it far enough back that I'm not into that one. Okay, now another technique that we're going to use is we're going to add a little highlight to these inside edges here. So we're going to use the same method. I'm going to draw right on top of this edge, and I don't have to get so close to my corners here. This is going to be a different technique. Okay, we'll add that there. Okay, and I want to go ahead and zoom in on that corner and take a look at that. Make sure it's where I want it to be. Okay. I'm going to come in just on the inside here. All right, that's probably good enough. Okay, and I'm going to take that stroke and we're going to go to our fill and stroke dialog box, and I'm going to make that a radial gradient. Okay, then I'm going to select my gradient tool, and I'm going to move my gradient tool down here. Way it gets it out of the way. And I'm going to select this node here. I'm going to hold my control key down, push it all the way up, about right there. And I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to left click on that node point, and I'll make that a little bit longer here. And about somewhere in the middle, I'm going to double click and add another node. Okay, now that disappeared a little bit. Not to worry. We just select our stroke again, our gradient tool, and then we see our midpoint there. Now I'm going to go to this edit button, and I'm going to select the middle one, and I'm going to give it full opacity, and we'll select our top stop, and we'll make it transparent. Okay, so basically what I have is the one in the middle is fully opaque with the top and the bottom transparent. And by doing that, that gives me highlights in the middle here on both the bottom and the side. Fades out down here in the corner and up at the top. Okay, that gives me just a little bit of a highlight effect, so it doesn't look, too plain. All right, and I think we're getting very, very close. The next thing that I'm going to do is show you two methods. Okay, now to get chalk on this thing, or a chalk effect, the first thing that you might think of is, hey, I'll just go grab a chalk font, and there are plenty of chalk fonts that you can download. I'll put up one. For example, we can just write some text out here. And I'll go to the font tool, and I have just one chalk font called Eraser. I'll apply that, and we'll make that white, and I'll put that right there. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Alright, now if you were just perfectly fine with a chalk font, you would be done at this point. Getting whatever, you might want to tilt that just a little bit so it's not quite so perfect. Okay, and maybe that's just fine with you. Maybe that's what you were looking for. Well, excuse me. If you want to make shapes or actually handwrite something on there, well, you need to simulate handwriting. And one of the things that you can do is grab your calligraphy tool and start drawing on here. But the problem is with the calligraphy tool and the mouse, it's not so natural. So what I like to do when I use the calligraphy tool is use my Wacom tablet, because that is a little bit more natural. I can hold a stylus, which acts as my pen or my pencil, and I can just sketch away, and it looks very natural. Okay, so let's take a look at that technique. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my stylus, okay, and a Wacom tablet in Ubuntu Intrepid or 8.10 is not very user-friendly like it used to be. It used to be that when I plugged in my Wacom tablet, it would just work in Ubuntu. That's because the Wacom tools section was in the Xorg config file. Well, with the latest Ubuntu, it's been stripped away because they do things differently now, and that the hot plugging works a little differently, and that's why my Wacom is interfering with my my key status monitor, because in order to get the key status monitor in Inkscape working, or in Ubuntu actually, you have to turn the hot plugging off. So that's, you know, gibberish to you guys at this point, but it doesn't matter. So basically, I got my Wacom working, the stylus is working, and that's most important. Some of the other things aren't, but it doesn't really matter for this screencast. So anyways, let's say for example, I grab my calligraphy tool, and you want to look at some of your settings up here and make sure that you have certain things set correctly. It takes a little trial and error to just play with your settings to where you get something that looks, you know, kind of natural. Let me make that black so you guys can see. And let me turn off the stroke here. Okay. Let me erase these. So back to my my Wacom. This is the first screencast where I've actually used my Wacom. I haven't been using it in a while. It all depends on what project I'm working on. But anytime that I want to draw or sketch something that looks a little bit more natural, I grab my Wacom and plug it in and start using it. So anyways, with the calligraphy tool, once you got your settings right, things are very natural, okay? And what I want to just write, we'll just write something kind of stupid here. We're all math majors, right? So let's do let's undo that. Let's do something very, very simple. Let's just do a okay. So let's say I take all of this here, and we'll group it together for now, and I'll just move it on here. Okay, and basically that's all I needed to use my Wacom for. You can put anything you want on there, obviously. I just wanted to make something simple for the screencast. So, but basically what I have is, since I've drawn it with my Wacom, I really don't have that chalk effect. So how do I get that chalk effect? Well, we can do that by, let me ungroup this now. And let me take, sure I got that all. Let me take each object and let me group all of that together. I wonder if I can combine it instead of grouping. Let me see what the combining does. Okay, combining will do it. Okay, that might be easier. And I'm going to set up a filter effect to do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to Path. No, I'm going to go to Object, Filter Effects. And I've already got one in here for my blurs. Each time that you add a blur, it automatically gets added as a filter in Inkscape version 0.46. Okay, so what I'm going to do is set up a brand new filter, and let's give this one a name. Let's call it Chalk. By the way, in the latest development version of Inkscape, there is a Chalk filter. There's lots and lots of filters in there. It's called Chalk and Sponge, and it's already set up for you. So in that version, you won't have to do anything. But in Inkscape 0.46, you will have to set it up. Okay. So we do that by selecting our chalk, and we're going to add a few effects. So we want to add a blend. We want to find a color matrix. We're going to find a turbulence. And we're going to find a displacement map. We're going to add that. Okay, so we've added 4 items here. And we're going to make sure that our displacement map, let me see here. First one needs to be drag all the way up to the top, just like that. Okay, and we do that by selecting on this triangle and left mouse button, holding it down, dragging it all the way to the top. And that's all you got to do to connect your effects together. Okay, so we're going to go to our blend first and make sure that we have normal set, which we do. We're going to go to our color matrix, and let me look at my notes here. I'm going to change this to saturate, and I'm going to move this all the way to 1. We're going to go to our turbulence. I'm going to change this to fractal noise, and I'm going to make this about a 0.05, and I'm going to make this unit here 10. Okay, and we're going to go to our displacement map, and I'm going to select red here and green here, and I'm going to select a 5 here. Okay, and that's it. Our filter is set up. Okay, so when we select on this object, all I have to do is select our chalk, and then that turns it into a chalk effect. And if you can kind of see that in the background, let me just slide this over a little bit. Now, the filter is kind of based on, you know, how you want the filter to look. Now, you notice down here that our text is a little rougher around the edges. Well, we can make our filter a little rougher just by selecting or changing this 5 to a higher number. Okay? Now, if I use my slider, you notice what that's doing to my text right here. It's making it rougher. Okay, and we can get that to completely dissolve if we wish to. So if we want to make that like an 8, for example, to get that just a little rougher, well, you can do that. So you can play around with your settings just a little bit to get that just a little rougher. Okay. For the sake of the screencast, I'll just kind of call it quits and say that that's good enough and it looks like chalk. Okay. And at any time that you want to turn that feature off or that effect off, you can just go right back into your filter effect and turn it off, and then you're back to your text there, your straight text, unmodified. So let's take a look at where we are. Okay, your graphics will slow down a little bit when you add filters and blurs, and especially big raster textures like we've used. But basically what we have here is a blackboard, and that's what I wanted to simulate. Okay, use that for, you know, whatever project that you'd want to use it for. I hope I've kind of simulated some depth to our frame here just by adding a little drop shadows on there. And I think it looks all right. It maybe not 100% accurate, but I think it probably looks close enough. So that's our screencast. Thank you for watching. I'm HeathenX.